something like ChatGPT, which is a large language model, it is emerging. I mean, it just came into the open space in 2020 November, and so everybody is discovering how best to use it and to make themselves more efficient and more productive. And I think somebody said it's not about AI replacing your job; it's how your job is actually going to be replaced by somebody who's using AI. So it better be you than somebody else getting that advantage. So for me, laying the ground, it's more of a point of discussion and is to trigger the thinking. How do we utilize AI in our journey of continuous improvement and operational excellence? So what I'll talk about are broadly 7 areas, which is about, I mean, most of us, I believe, joining this call have had an introduction to lean thinking. So I'll just highlight the core principles that drive the thinking, an overview of AI technology, and then identifying waste, variation, and overburden. Because today we think like we are lean thinkers, but how do we use AI to be able to identify opportunities for waste elimination, opportunities that we can reduce variation, but also the opportunities that we can reduce the overburden, whether it's on the people or machinery, also for those of us who are in the manufacturing space. But I believe all these principles are quite are applicable broadly, and so I think it's just the initiative that we need to all take to see how then we apply these available technologies. And then strategies for process improvement, and then we'll talk about 3 or 4 case studies, and that to me is more or less to trigger the thinking on the applications. And then we talk about future trends. And finally, I think that the critical question that we all need to ask is, how then do we go out here and start applying? Because it's a process of discovery. I mean, if you look at what ChatGPT is doing today, it's not about what prompts you can write, but how good are you at engineering your prompts to be able to get the right output from ChatGPT. And it's still, I mean, the debate is still out there in terms of how good you are at writing prompts to elicit the kind of outcome or the kind of feedback you get from ChatGPT. Now, I want to probably, having set out the outline, I probably want to open the floor for further discussions. I just want to hear the response from the audience or the participants in terms of when they received the prompt to join this call, what were they coming, what are the expectations that were coming to see addressed? Maybe if I can just, whether it's through the chat or just opening up, clicking on your mic and sharing with me or us in terms of what expectations did you come with. So I open the floor for 3 minutes and just to receive or hear the expectations from the participants.
All right, thank you so much, Paul. And yes, you can either chat or just unmute yourself. It's okay.
Greetings. My name is Mary Were. I happen to be the executive director of an organization known as Winam Grassroots, which is a non-governmental institution. And my expectation today is to try and weave in terms of how then do we operationalize some of our activities and work within the budget constraints and then meet our objectives as an organization within our program. Thank you.
All right, Sakina, thanks, Mary. Sakina also writes on the chat, interests to join was to learn any emerging and existing trends in Lean and how AI will shape these trends. Thank you, Sakina. Thank you, Ruth. So Ruth's expectation is to understand better what AI tools will have impact on Lean in the short term, how to harness AI tools in the short term.
Yes, hi everyone. Didas Sendag is my name. I was particularly actually excited to join this webinar, particularly to learn how AI can be integrated with Lean. For me, it sounds interesting, and as a person who loves Microsoft tools, whenever I see whatever they are doing, incorporating AI in all the processes. So I believe as a business analyst, there's a lot I can take away from this. Thank you.
Thank you, Didas. That's great. Anyone else? Yes, Joanne. What comes first in an organization? Digital transformation, Lean ops, or AI adoption? Joanne, is that what you meant, like Lean ops or AI? Or would you like to just unmute to expand on that?
Yeah, sure. I just to know, like, if an organization is in the process of transforming their digital landscape, what should they do first? Should they ensure that their processes are lean, or should they just go ahead and adopt AI, things like ChatGPT AI? So what, it's a question of what comes first. Is it ensuring lean operations or adopting AI technologies?
All right, thank you. Thank you for that. I think Paul will be able to address that for sure. But thanks for that. The chicken and egg question.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Eric.
Eric for my name. I just wanted to know, I have a technology background, so I want to know what's the interface between lean thinking and AI. I would be biased on AI, assuming it will solve the problem. How will lean thinking inform the structuring, the coding, just the procedures at the back end of AI? Sometimes you might think we've automated, you are now AI, but maybe the process at the back end are iterating for long, they are not optimized. So it's essentially, we are automated, but we are not effective. So I want to know how lean thinking would inform the designers and the innovators as they even enhance the existing AI. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Eric, for that. Any takers to Paul's question on your expectations for today's session?
Thank you. So I think we can take those expectations and let's see how we go through the let's go through the presentation, and at the end of the talk we can then come back and recap. But there's one particular one from Mary right at the beginning that maybe she will need to clarify a little bit more. You talked about operationalizing the work that you do or the strategies that you have, but also there's the aspect of budget constraints. Maybe you just need to elaborate a little bit more there. The others, I clearly understood what the expectations are. So let's touch base when we end the presentation and see whether we will have addressed or we can have further discussions around each of the various outstanding expectations. So Mary, over to you.
Thank you, Paul. Mine is just to try and infuse in where are we able to cut costs, where are we able to work and use the tools of AI into our programming and ensure that at the end of the day, we are able to meet our objectives within, again, the budgeting. I don't know whether that's much better.
I think that requires an offline discussion just to get into to understanding the process better. So just in order for us to make good use of this time in the interest of the rest of the team, I would request that we proceed. However, we can actually have an offline discussion to understand your challenge much better and to offer probable direction or guidance towards addressing your immediate concerns. Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, the principles of Lean. So I'll shoot straight into the presentation. So the principles of Lean are clear. Where did it originate? I think we attribute the origination of Lean from the Toyota production system. What is now highly developed as Lean thinking has its origin from the Toyota production system. And the focus is basically two. That's eliminate continuous improvement and eliminate waste. And there are methodologies and techniques that are used to drive continuous improvement. We talk about Kaizen every day. And then waste elimination, we talk about the 7 or 8 types of waste that are inherent in processes. And you know, when you start off any Lean journey, you realize that probably the non-value added or the waste in the process is probably to a degree of, let's say, 80 or 70%. And you work towards eliminating those aspects of waste step by step, whether it's overproduction or whether it's inventory or whether it's overburden in any of your steps or processes, then you work towards eliminating that in a continuous manner. The other objective of Lean is to maximize on customer value while minimizing the resources that you're using. So that's clear. You start your journey, your Lean journey, by understanding what your customer requirements are, and you translate that into technical or detailed requirements that would then subject in reviewing, that you then subject in reviewing your processes, and to understand how each step in the process is contributing to that customer value. So if you have a 10-step process, each of those steps you have to give it or evaluate it from the perspective of the customer. It's guided by 5 principles, and these are never changing principles. It's about identifying value from the customer's perspective. You've got to understand the value stream and therefore the processes that support that value stream. You then have to create a continuous flow in the process to ensure that it's delivering to the customer's tact, and then establish pool based on the customer demand. And that's the tact that I mentioned. And then you pursue perfection by starting again from step 1, principle 1, and you work through that whole process in a repeated or repetitive manner. So that are the core principles for Lean thinking. In order to save on time, I'll just flash through. I've just flashed through them, but I think if you need further discussions in a lot more detail, tools and techniques that will be able to help you in each of those principles, core principles. Now, we've been through a series of, for each decade is defined by a certain phenomenon. So, for example, we keep on talking about this being the fourth industrial revolution, and it's mainly driven by being an information age. But I think on the cusp of last year, 2022, we are getting into an age where AI is going to be really very critical in shaping how the human experience is, whether it be it on the domestic front or even work front. So AI is going to play a very critical role going forward. And as I mentioned in the beginning, it's not about whether AI will replace your job. I think someone else using AI is the one who is going to take over your job. So I think I would encourage adoption of AI, but obviously you have to have a goal or a target to achieve in order to use AI as an enabler. So that's something that we need to open up for further discussions on how do we. This is my goal, and I like the way, Mary, you rephrased what your challenge is. So the big question is, how do we use the AI tools that are available today in the market to be able to harness the opportunities that you're seeing in your job or in your role? Now, AI comes in several fronts, and it is in the form of machine learning, deep learning, natural language processing, or computer visions. Now, let me go a little bit deeper. Machine learning is all about statistical and analytical methodologies that are applied to data to help you. One is to understand trends and patterns. However, the same algorithms can help you then to predict what's going to happen in the future. And the machine learning keeps on improving based on the data that it is trained on. Then secondly, it's also the data that then it's exposed on. So you do a lot of fine tuning to ensure that prediction is as close as possible to the real life. Now, deep learning goes a little bit one layer lower in terms of creating.
Hey, Paul, we're losing you. We can't hear you. Eric, I see your hand up as well. Will you try again, Paul?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
I think it got better.
Okay, sorry for that. So what I'm saying is machine learning has to do with, sorry, just 1 second. Okay, so as I mentioned, the natural language processing is, for example, just the best example we can use is the ChatGPT, where as a user you're able to write a prompt, and based on that prompt, the algorithms or the model translates your prompt into a computer understood and a language that the computer is able to understand, translates that language into a format that the computer is then able to understand. It applies the algorithm and then spits out information that is also legible to you as a human being. So it's just creating that interface between the computers, the way the computer works, and also the way we speak or comprehend information. And then computer vision is actually being able to use visuals to communicate. The computer is able to translate visuals and therefore share back information with a person using or with a human being. So those are some of the techniques that are available today or that are accessible, broadly accessible today, that can be applied under AI techniques. Now, the important aspect that we all need to realize is that all this is based on large amounts of information to be able to identify patterns, but also be able to make predictions. Now, as opposed to the lean thinking, we always use secondary data, But sometimes we also set up systems to help us capture primary data. But you realize that the bridge for AI is to be able to use those existing data. So yes, you have your primary data, existing data in large amounts, but then you can also make those decisions and predictions on a very real-time basis. I think for me, the best example that comes to mind is the Uber. So when you get those fare hikes, do you know what's happening? It's about tweaking the model to be able to deliver based on the data that is present at that time, tweaking the model to be able to deliver the right pricing. And that's how they are also able to maximize on their profit margins on a real-time basis. I am informed that at some point in time, when they were launching the platform, Uber as a platform, in the early days, they would have a control room where that tweaking actually would happen. Only a very few people would be allowed into that room because that's really what has become their competitive advantage of sustaining themselves in the market against competition. So really, real-time prediction is very critical. So if you're working with a process that requires that kind of prediction, so for example, if you're working out in the field and you're a farmer, large-scale farmer, and you need to know at every stage of the process how your plants are doing, whether the temperatures are high, humidity levels are the right ones. Those are the kind of applications that AI then becomes very productive or very, very useful. Okay, now in terms of identifying waste, variation, and overburden in process, using lead and AI, we have process optimization. I mean, they're just, if I open up the floor for further discussion, is where could you, having had that introduction, where could you use AI to help in driving process optimization? Maybe an example from the floor, having had the introduction that we just had. So we'll take 2 minutes to just hear from the floor on your experience in any of the 4 or 5 areas that are put out there, and how can you use AI to then help you in improving your process, driving efficiency, reducing costs, or even just improving the performance of any given process in those 5 broad areas. But even if you feel that there's another area that I haven't listed there, you're free to offer that as a point of further discussion. So the floor is open. I can talk about process optimization. So one of the things that I've had an opportunity to implement is the Internet of Things. So in one of the plants that we've worked in, we have connected sort of a sensor to the power supply cable, and that sensor is then able to read into a hub, and then that hub reads onto the IoT platform, which then is able to give us the data, several views of that single source of data in very different views, and then we are able to see the efficiency on the production floor on a more real-time basis, which means then if the operator is overloading the machine, if he's underloading the machine, if the machine is idling, which means it's just taking up power without a commensurate output, then we are able to intervene and understand exactly what is leading to that process sub-optimization. So really, from a process optimization, that's just one example of using a sensor on the power supply of the equipment, which is then read into a hub, which then transmits that information onto the IoT platform, which then can then be interpreted in a human-friendly way. And then based on that, we can actually take the appropriate actions to address the sub-optimization. Any other examples across the room?
Okay, I would take demand forecasting. Of course, maybe this is something you can exploit. Based on AI, of course, specifically recommender systems. All through the year, you can predict the passenger behavior on how they book, on how they travel. So based on that, you can plan ahead. Of course, you can add if it is fleet or whatever you want to add to now match the demand you are projecting. But of course, you have to first get their data, to get their behavior, of course, based on recommender systems, and be collaborative or whatever approach you take. So I think that's an area we can explore more in the areas I work. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I think what Eric has raised there is, again, when you think about lean, if your background is on the lean, you can clearly see where there's waste, there's overburden, and so the opportunity to and variation, obviously, and variation. So then you use the data to help you then optimize or exploit those opportunities, because you can look at it in very, very different ways. Is it an opportunity for you to exploit as a business? Is it an opportunity for you to then reduce the overburden that you have? How do you then access extra resources to then be able to meet that demand, and so on and so forth? So it presents in different ways for depending on where you're sitting from, or depending on where you're looking at this from. Okay. Anyone else?
Yes, hi. Shamina is my name. Mine is on quality control. Where we are trying to capture the different weights, because we used to have a lot of variances during production. So we do capture using digital weighing scales. We do capture the different weights. So we get several data on the weights of all the different products from all machines in all production floors. So at a 30 minutes interval, we are able to capture the first stable weight is the one that is captured. So it is helping us to actually understand where we are losing more of the material, or where we are not giving the customers the right product. So because of that data, when we check in the system, the improvements that are being made at the moment is to ensure that in the system, the data is averaged. So it is easy for you to just come and click once. You don't waste a lot of time on computing the data. So you click once and you're able to get the average weight that was produced in, let's say, a shift. So I feel like there is more that is supposed to be done. Perhaps after this presentation, I'll have an input with a team that is working on it, but I feel like it is helping us at the moment.
Thank you, Shamina. Any other offers? Good. So when we talk about predictive maintenance, for example, because predictive maintenance is about being able to predict when a certain component or part of the equipment is going to fail. And that failure, when that failure is just about to happen, a couple of things changes in the way the part is behaving. So one, either it's temperature that goes high, high level of vibration happens. And so if you either just pick one of those with a sensor, because you can pick temperature fluctuations with a sensor. You can also pick vibrations with a sensor. And if you then convert that data, so you're getting data points at every minute or second of the operation of the machine running, you're then able to get those data points, which you then submit into a data warehouse or data storage, and then use different manipulation tools, whether it's on the AI, using AI techniques, statistical analysis, you understand patterns, and based on that, if it is really a very critical part in the machine, then you exactly know when to replace it. So I mean that is quite can be widely used. If it is just a very critical maintenance significant part, then you know you don't have to replace it maybe before it fails. You replace it just about when it fails. And for those of us who are in industry, you realize that cost of repairs and maintenance is usually very huge. So what that does is to help you extend the limit of the parts, or how long you use the parts, and therefore optimize your maintenance on operations cost. So that's one very vital use case in terms of predictive maintenance. Okay. All right. So so there are various, obviously, strategies when you're talking about lean. There are various techniques that you use to eliminate waste, balance the workload, such as Kaizen, Kanban, and value stream mapping. And I see a lot of potential in the application of AI techniques, where even when you're talking about Kanban. So how do you know when to produce and when not to produce when you're talking about Kanban? And when you're talking about value stream mapping, it's all about, because value stream mapping, you can't do your value stream map without data. So how do you get the right data in terms of your cycle time, your non-value added time, your idle time? So how do you get that data to that level of precision? And especially if you're dealing with, say, let's say, a very massive operation, you can only rely on data that is harnessed or captured by the use of, say, Internet of Things. The example that has been shared by Shamina is simply using a digital scale and tapping the digital output of the scale into a storage area, and then manipulating that data with the appropriate tools that obviously hinge on artificial intelligence, whether it's a machine learning, statistical analysis, or other analytical tools or techniques that are available through AI. So it's clear that AI, for me, has a place, and it's also about how we approach the automation of those tasks to provide us with the right piece of information, because there's a lot of information or data out here. I think the key is about identifying what data that you need to track and using what tools or techniques to track that data. Okay, so as I said, there are three levels. There's waste. In terms of lean, there are three levels. That's waste, variation, and overburden. But you know, when we talk about lean thinking, we have these three phenomena. That's Muda, Muri, and Mura. So Muda is waste, Muri is variation, and Mura is overburden. So how do we go about reducing or eliminating? Because we know very well from a lean perspective, these take up time and resources as well, but they're not really contributing or making the customer value any better or any improved. So as I say, there's an opportunity for data analytics. There's an opportunity for process mining. If you don't understand the process, how the process steps follow, then how do you mine data out of that process? I think you can only understand the process through value stream mapping or process mapping, which is core to lean thinking. And through there, you then know exactly where to tap the data, and then use the analytical tools to then help you understand exactly what's going on, and then manage the process in a more efficient, effective way looking forward. There's a place for machine vision. And so I think the case that Shamina mentioned is about one very important one, because even when the product drops out of the machine, yes, it has to be placed on the weighing scale by a human being. So what about if we had clear cameras that would direct or guide robots, which would then pick that machine, which would then pick that part onto the weighing scale, and so on and so forth. But again, depending on where you're coming from or what situation you're trying to address, there's also the aspect of cost. So it's a good balance between cost and the techniques that are available as we are speaking today. I think Eric talked about recommender systems. That's where the sentiment analysis comes in very well, because today you're able to, with a specific target audience or even customer, you're able to target whether their comments or interactions, web interactions or social media interactions are positive, negative, or neutral, depending on the words that they're using. So sentiment analysis is also becoming very critical or key in terms of understanding the customer experience. So strategies we know very well for reducing waste include reduce the overproduction, minimize inventory, reduce transportation, streamline processes, improve quality. And I think having had that introduction, it's very clear on what AI tools or techniques we can use in each of these 5 areas to identify exactly what to do. Because in Lean, it's first coming from a position of, you first have to understand what's going on. You can't jump into improvement without understanding what's going on. So you have to understand where the overproduction is happening. You have to understand where inventory gets staged for long, your working process. You have to understand where transportation occurs, the time it takes to transport, the distance of transportation. You then have to understand your process steps. You have to understand the level of your quality and exactly what are you measuring with regards to quality. What are you looking for? What are the customer specifications? Or what are the customer requirements in order to be able to improve that? And how is the process behaving or responding with regards to those quality requirements in order for you to be able to improve the quality? And that data, to the degree that would help you make conclusive decisions, can only be captured today using some of the techniques of AI that we've talked about. In terms of reducing variation, it's all about process standardization. I think for me today, there's a challenge about if you have a massive operation, 24-hour operation, and you have different pieces of equipment, and at any given point in time, you have a different person interacting with that equipment, how do you ensure that the settings on that equipment are as required? Because everybody comes and fidgets with a human HMI, the human machine interface, and keys in different sets of parameters, which then correspondingly gives you a certain output. So how do you ensure that those kind of steps or processes are standardized, just so that the output of the equipment is predictable? And I think there are so many applications you can think about when it comes to standardizing a process. And then implement statistical process control, and then use AI-driven predictive analytics, because also when you talk about a process going out of control, there are indicators that the process is shifting and it's tending towards getting out of control. So how do you use predictive analytics to be able to ensure that it doesn't actually get out of control? Using this again, as I talked about standardized processes and different operators interfacing or interacting with the equipment, then how do you determine that that particular operator actually requires training or skills development because of how he is interacting with the equipment and the outputs that you're getting out of the equipment? There's no better way than using those sensors or directly tapping on the data that is coming out of the equipment and then being able to display or display that on a dashboard and using that information to then determine whether the operator actually requires further skills development. And again, as we say, the sky's the limit. So continuous improvement, there will always be a need for continuous improvement. So how do you use that data to review and to improve your processes going forward? Balancing the workload, I think the example that Eric gave is quite pertinent, is how do you determine where the customer demand is occurring? How do you shift your resources to where that demand is? And I think that's why the Uber platform is also very key in that regard, because you find where most of these riders are parked is most probably where most of the demand occurs. And therefore, they are ready to respond when the customers are actually available, or where the customers are more or less available. And that leads to resource optimization, helps us to implement flexibility in our work processes. It also helps us to cross-train our employees to be able to respond to different size levels or types of demand that we are getting from the customer. And then we can employ also digital tools for workload management. I think ChatGPT is one very clear example. If you need to draft a letter today, you just need to write a prompt, draft a letter, a very specific prompt, and within half a minute, you've got your letter out. So that's how powerful some of these tools are. So how do you use that to minimize or to reduce the workload? Okay, so we'll talk about certain case studies. These are, the names are not revealed, but we'll talk about how different businesses have used AI tools to help them overcome some of the challenges that they had in the business. So this is an example of an automotive manufacturer faced inventory and customer satisfaction challenges, inefficient production scheduling resulting to overproduction and excess inventory, long lead times led to missed delivery dates and obviously unhappy customers. So they implemented an AI-powered production scheduling software. Software analyzed historical production data to predict demand, adjust production schedules in real time. And that's more or less to help the production team to know what to prioritize on for that particular moment in time based on customer demand. The results basically is led to reduced inventory levels, cut the lead time by 25, and then improve on-time delivery to the customer. And obviously that then led to enhanced customer satisfaction and loyalty. In terms of case study on the healthcare, so there's a large healthcare provider faced with staff scheduling and patient outcome challenges. Inefficient staff scheduling led to overburdened employees and long patient wait times. Patients experience poorer outcomes due to resource constraints. And I think it's always, you know, if you're using, let's say, a very static or a very dumb system to do the scheduling that does not respond to exactly what's happening in the moment, then I think there will be some inefficiencies there. And so they used an AI-powered demand-focusing software to predict patient demand, because again, the patients who come to the hospital are not always coming with the same issue. And so how are you then able to finesse that and to be able to determine what kind of specialization do you need at that given point in time? So the software analyzes historical patient data, real-time information to optimize staff scheduling. Results is that patient wait time reduced by 20%, optimize the staff schedule, reducing overtime by almost 50%. Obviously, the patient outcomes became better through timely care and better resource allocation. For a retail team, they were struggling with inventory management, a very prevalent problem in any organization that has to handle inventory and customer satisfaction. So you end up finding a mismatch between demand and the available stock. So either you are overstocked or out of stock, and also inefficient stores layout. So AI-driven inventory optimization and store layout. The results were obviously reduced inventory cost, improved sales, and increased customer satisfaction. For a logistics company facing challenges with route optimization and delivery efficiency, a very pertinent problem that is being solved by tools like Sendy and also the Sendy app, Sendy fulfillment, and also the Uber. So we see that there was inefficient routes, high fuel consumptions, and late deliveries. So through AI-powered route optimization and real-time traffic analysis, led to reduced fuel consumption, faster deliveries, and improved customer experience. Maybe before I get into this next phase, is there any question at this point that, or clarity that would need me to go back to one of those slides? Because the next is basically, I want to open the floor for further discussion in terms of what's the role of leadership in fostering this, and how do we actually create a culture that enables lean and AI application. Any questions? Okay, so shall I then just proceed into the next, which is about the role of leadership? What do you think is the role of leadership in bringing in lean and AI strategies. I think most of us, some of us have had experience with lean, so that may be very clear. But what about AI? Eric, what do you think? Can you offer some thoughts there?
Okay. I think leadership should lead from the front. You did mention earlier that in the process of implementing AI, of course, the employee will be skeptical that the system will eliminate their job. So I think there's a need to just have a good change management process. Of course, also, of course, train the employee on how the leveraging on AI will improve their work based on what they are doing. Of course, the key areas you've talked about, whether their role is optimizing or their role is demand forecasting, whichever they are doing, or their role is maintenance. So you just tell them the goods, the benefits there, but they will drive from AI so that they don't resist the change. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Leaders, you want to offer some thoughts? Anyone else across the room? Hello, Tabu. Ruth, are you able to offer some thoughts here? Okay. All right. So I think one of the other key things, yes, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to add on Eric's contribution, which was more of giving the direction, giving the people that you want to adopt to that change, to be clear on the direction. So if there is clarity on the direction, I feel like the culture is easy to build. Yeah, the culture is easy to build. So we need to give the right, we need to be clear on the direction, much as there is change management. So even if you come up with your change management strategies and the direction is not very clear, at some point you might end up losing it. So if there is clarity in the direction, I feel like it's easy to adopt to the changes, and then you're good to implement whatever you're having.
Okay.
Sorry. Yes, my add-on to this would be it's the role of actual leadership to create strong teams by identifying the necessary skills required at every level to make sure that all the implementation flows through properly. Because if actually you haven't identified the right skills, then you're bound to fail. And this also takes in the perspective of ethics, because if you're going to move around the AI-driven culture, then even ethics must be part of the how should I call it? It should be one of the things management must put into consideration before any implementation. Thank you.
So yes, I mean, direction is very key. If you're not clear about what you want to achieve and going for technology's sake, then I think that is surely doomed to fail. I think it's important that from the get-go, the leadership defines what exactly, in tangible terms, what they want to achieve out of their lean and their strategies. Secondly, as you mentioned, without the right skills, obviously that leads to staff frustration. So skills is also very, very important. And then finally, the change management that Eric mentioned is also very, very, very important, because sometimes we over-rely on the technology or use the technology in the unintended way. And so we then the unintended consequence where the employees end up either playing the technology or not really appreciating or understanding how that technology is going to help them to be more efficient in their output or in their work. So those are three very critical aspects that leadership will need to consider in terms of shaping the culture to fostering lean AI-enabled organizations. But those are just part three. I believe there are so many others that we also need to find out.
We do have, Paul, we do have Sakina. Sakina's hand is up. So
Sure.
kindly just unmute. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I think some of the things I wanted to put across have already been mentioned by the others in the call. However, just one thing that I think would be a key leadership role in lean application, assuming that this is an organization that's already within the lean space. So how do they bring on board AI capability? For me, I think two things stand out. If AI is all you're bringing in to integrate into your lean, is that you need to provide the resources and set the foundation for AI introduction into the lean process.
Okay. No, I think that's resources is critical because yes, there will be some expenditure, some money or financing required. So yes, determining how much or what resources are available to make it happen is also a critical one. Thank you, Sakim. Okay. Again, the potential challenges is obviously we've talked about resistance to change. We talked about data quality and availability. I think this is one key one because AI, and obviously lean, we don't say we're improving a process or we are performing lean without the data. The data is very, very important. The degree at which we are looking at data when you're talking about AI is big data. It's data that is that is available to us or that is generated at every minute or second of the operation of the day. So that's what is important, the quality of it and the availability of that data. And then what I mentioned also is the over-reliance on technology. What I'm saying is that the role of the human interface is still very critical. So let's not look at trying to replace the human being, the role of the human being, with the feelings and perspective with technology. So over-reliance, we've got to have a balance between application of technology and the role of the human being, okay? So we can discuss about the strategies for addressing some of these challenges or pitfalls, but I think what we talked about in the leadership somehow in one way or another does help to address some of those pitfalls. In terms of trends or emerging opportunities, we're seeing the use of big data and the Internet of Things, and this will then have a huge impact on how the business operates, but also the strategic direction of some of the businesses, because we've seen clearly that big data or Internet of Things, or even just AI, has shaped some of the business models that we talk about today. So Uber, as a business model or as a business, wouldn't be in existence if big data or Internet of Things would not have been place. So you can see how Uber and the rest of the platforms are harnessing big data to be able to drive their businesses forward. AI-powered process improvement, that's an opportunity. Enhanced decision making. I think I talked about the Internet of Things, being able to have a sensor attached to a machine, being able to read that data on a real-time basis on a platform, and being able to then make decisions or provide direction in terms of what needs to happen in the operation. Real-time data-driven insights, as I talked about the heat maps on where there's a lot of demand being concentrated for the taxi platforms, the Uber call platforms. You can see how that data or insights are being used to drive real-time decisions. So how do we, as a participants, I think the key question is, how do we use these opportunities to help leverage our business and to help create a competitive advantage for our businesses, but also to shape the operating models for the various businesses. In terms of, as I said, sorry, this is just an addition. So we are seeing applications in service industries, supply chain management, smart manufacturing. The examples I've shared in manufacturing are basically just part the beginning, but there's a lot more that can be done within the manufacturing space. The integration with other technologies, that's augmented reality and visual reality, supply chain optimization in terms of managing where the inventory is, reducing inventory, improving the efficiencies of our logistics operations, and customer experience, using AI to improve the experience that the customers are having, and personalizing those interactions, automating some of the aspects of customer service and providing real-time insights for the customer. And in concluding, lean thinking and AI are powerful tools for helping us to optimize our processes and enhancing operational efficiency. Synergy between lean and AI creates opportunities for innovation and growth. I think I've talked about AI giving us the opportunity to even shape our strategy, but also to create new business models that we had not envisaged before. And then continuous learning and adaptations are key to success in the digital age. Some of the skills that we never thought we required last year today are becoming ever more important. Like, there's a new term called prompt engineering. How do you draft the right prompt for ChatGPT or any of those AI-driven tools to be able to give you the right response or the response that you require? I think that's going to be key, even as we step into the the AI age. Thank you. That ends my presentation. So I'll hand over back to Elizabeth for the formalities. But I think the thing that we need to just reflect upon is what the participants shared as being their expectations. So as I said, maybe we can have a chat offline just so that we can understand better what exactly is your challenge and how you envision using the AI tools to be able to help you have a better outcome. In terms of leaders, I think what the presentation said was not to go down into the specifics, but just to provide a trigger for further discussions on how we can use AI and the present tools that are being availed at a very fast pace in terms of making our work more efficient. If I can particularly respond to the question from Joan, it's digital, lean ops, and AI adoption. So which one comes first? In my perspective, you have to first of all understand your process, and that is through lean. Now, you have to ensure that there's you eliminate the variation that is present, standardize the processes. You have to ensure that there's no overburden or eliminate those instances of overburden, and then proceed to the digital, because through digital, you're then able to see where you can capture the data that you can capture, what tools or techniques or technologies that you need to use to capture that data. And then you can move into the AI adoption, because AI works above or works based on data, massive tons and tons of data. So it's lean operations, digital, and then AI, the AI adoption. That's what I would propose. Thank you. Back to you, Liz.
To add on what to John's question, I think sometimes there's always, when we had technology, and I'm glad you brought in the issue of we need to avoid our over-reliance on technology too much, because if you automate simple technology, if you automate a process without removing the inefficiencies, then you're just increasing the speed for the inefficient results. So garbage in, garbage out. And I think with AI, an example of when ChatGPT came out in November, a lot of people would give, requests and they would come with inaccurate data. So that shows that whatever you have in your system, so as much as it's artificial intelligence, remember it's the human work behind it. But this has been very, very useful in terms of understanding what options are for both the manufacturing and service industries. So are there any questions or something that perhaps wasn't addressed very well that we can answer now before we close?
Yeah, Elizabeth, Paul, thank you so much for the presentation. As we went through this, I've been trying to look at ways actually I can leverage on these tools. I've built a number of cost minimization and profit maximization models on the side of in commercial perspective. But one of the challenges I've been facing is because I've been relying on previous data and I have to rerun these models every now and then. But the key take from this, I should be able to incorporate these models to real-time analytics so that I'm able to get predictory insights every now and then. And I believe this will help me work better. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Didas. Thank you. Any other thoughts? No.
Thank you, Paul, for the class.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Just to add, I know one issue that's been boggling my mind is what comes first, because we know the guys doing programming, doing the codes of maybe Pythons, of course, the various tools that are used for the machine learning and whatever, they might not know about the lean processes. So how does lean processes come in? And I think Paul has elaborated very well that we need to make our processes lean first. Before we can now implement AI. Because I know that's true, even ChatGPT, when it first came, the word limits were less, but I know they're saying that ChatGPT-4 will now go up to 25,000 words. Of course, Google Bard is also coming to compete it. So it's kind of improvement as something comes by, but you need to know you are improving from what. So that's where now the lean process should come in. Thank you for the class. I appreciate so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric, and thanks for your participation. Sakina?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'd just like to also express my gratitude to both yourself and Paul for putting this together. Definitely my question has been answered in terms of the emerging trend with lean and AI. And my takeout for sure is the clarification that Paul has just given towards the end. As we're implementing AI, we need to, just follow that sequence, then we get it right. A lot of times organizations are very quick to digitalize. So where they feel there's an inefficiency, the almost obvious answer would be, can this be done digitally? Yes. And very quickly, digital solutions, for lack of a better word, are put in place. But then we adopt all the waste into the digital platforms. And then we wonder why our problems are not going away. So that's a very good takeout for me. And I think for me, it was a light bulb moment. And I fully understand why problems don't just go away, even though people have digitalized almost everything. Thank you.
Well put, yes, well put. Thanks, Akina.
Yeah. Maybe I could also add a comment, Elizabeth. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. It is now afternoon. Let me start by confessing that my attention was not fully on this because I had another call, so I was trying to see how I can get the most out of both. Obviously, they're losing something in the process, but I'd like to comment on two things. One is around digitalization and the next step, which ideally should be automation. So to digitize is very different from automating, and automation is what eventually should give us the data that then will drive the big data that you're talking about. Digitizing is very easy. It's like saying the way they do on eCitizen, instead of now walking into the office, scan and send your documents. So fine, it's now digitized, but there is still not an automation. There's somebody sitting on the other side to receive it. So the only thing we've basically eliminated is the need for someone to physically walk in. So it's very important to also keep that in mind, that one important process that will give you the data that you need is the automation. And I think that's where my next point comes in, which is on the cost, which I also think is very prohibitive. And that also impacts our ability to tap onto AI to improve our processes. I think that's one of the probably things that we need to think about, even as a country, on how do we, start to maybe have big data companies that are capturing data that can either be sold or tapped into for you to be able to then improve your processes. Because I think on a small scale, it's very difficult to be able to get all these millions of data points to help you to improve. I'm not too sure about whether anyone exists in Kenya doing that, but I just think this is one of the challenges, the cost that goes into capturing all this data to then give us, the information we need to then improve the processes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruth. Well said. Yes, and those are good points. I think our clarity in general on what digitization is, automation is, digital transformation is often very vague and leads to a lot of confusion for businesses. So thanks for bringing some clarity into that. And I hope as we engage more, there'll be more opportunities for us to learn from each other. Luke, I see your hand is up.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think, thank you. It's been a very informative session. For me, I think I've gathered that there's a lot of data out there being generated by different businesses, even in manufacturing. And I'm very keen to think around how we can harness that data, given my background in insurance and actuarial work, to actually tailor-make insurance products that are just quite affordable to the businesses, and they are precise. And even when it comes to claims processing, we have all the information that we require to ensure that the entire chain of purchasing insurance and processing of claims is smooth. And also the compensation is commensurate to the losses that have been incurred by the businesses. So yeah, that's my take home.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think how do we use all this information to improve our products? That's also an avenue for us to think through moving forward. And yeah, thanks everyone. Just as a reminder, again, we do have monthly conversations is to help us within East Africa to actually converge and discuss some of these principles coming in. And I look forward to seeing you. And if you're also interested in presenting in upcoming sessions, it's really open. So I know some of you here today, besides Paul and myself, are also lean specialists. And also Eric, you are on the techie side. So if you have anything and you'd like to share with a team of operational professionals, just reach out to me. So once again, thank you so much. And wherever you are, have a great afternoon. And yeah, we are thankful for the rains. So keep warm as well. Aye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you,
very much
Paul.
for
Thank you,
the
everyone.
presentation. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.